Was Monday Night Raw really that bad at 2 hours? Yes. Yes, it was. There's your video. In all seriousness, I was not a fan of Monday Night Raw this past Monday. I've been watching WWE since 2002, but I've always kind of been on and off. Sometimes I watch on a full-time basis, sometimes I don't. This last time, however, I watched the entire build-up to WrestleMania 39, and once Vince McMahon came back for the Raw after Mania, I stopped watching. All the way up until SummerSlam last year, and I watched SummerSlam last year, and then I started watching again full-time on the build-up to Survivor Series, and I've only missed 2 episodes the entire time since then. So I have a pretty good idea, on how good the shows have been. And at 3 hours, I thought they've been cooking. They've had really good flow. Every show is like minimum 8 out of 10. Lots of 9 out of 10s and even a couple of 10 out of 10s have occurred on Raw recently. And the fear when it was announced that it was going to be 2 hours was that the show wasn't going to be paced well. There might be too many commercials. And all of that came to fruition with this last episode of Raw. Truthfully, it went from the greatest show on the planet to extremely mid. Just like that. In just a matter of a week. In my opinion. I'm going to get into why. I'm going to get into what I think they can do to fix it. Because I do think it's fixable. I do think it's salvageable. I do think it's going to be a while. So, without any further ado, let's get right into it. So, first off, things felt incredibly rushed. The first match of the night, Jey Uso versus Xavier Woods, probably needed another 5-10 minutes, and on a 3-hour show it would have gotten it. Just as that match finally kind of hooked you, it was over. It was just like that, done. And that was the story throughout the entire show. The entire show, just as you got hooked into a match or a segment, it was over. They just couldn't hook you because they kept all the storylines going, which is commendable and respectable, but they kept all the storylines going and tried to put it all into a 2-hour show when it's meant for a 3-hour show. And on top of that, the god-awful amount of commercials. They tried fitting 3 hours worth of commercials into a 2-hour show, so that really messed with the flow. And I think that's going to be the biggest detriment to if they can fix things going forward, which we will get into here in a little bit. Don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But all night pacing was kind of off. The only 2 exceptions was the Sheamus versus Don't Call Him Butch Pete Dunne Donnybrook match, and then the main event between Gunther and Sami Zayn. Which, even that being said, the only match of the entire night, or only segment of the entire night that felt like it was fine with commercials and paced well, was the Donnybrook match between Sheamus and Pete Dunne. The main event had 1 or 2 extra commercial breaks than you would normally get on a Raw main event. Usually the Raw main event didn't have a lot of commercials. They stockpiled all the commercials in the first 2.5 hours, so that final 30 minutes, you only get 2 commercial breaks. And I believe we got 3 commercial breaks during the main event this time, if not 4. Which again, during a match, and even 1 extra commercial break is a lot, let alone if there's another one. So, the pacing was off. The commercials were atrocious. The commercials absolutely did not help. And in my opinion, this is the worst Raw since Triple H has taken over. I'm not counting the Raw after WrestleMania 39 when Vince McMahon came back, because that was a Vince McMahon show, not a Triple H show. So, absolutely, I think this was the worst Raw of the year, and it's probably the worst Raw in the last 1.5 to 2 years. And I don't think that's a hot take at all. I think that's just the truth. So, what can they do to fix this going forward? 1, you need to limit your commercial breaks like SmackDown has. SmackDown, I thought had too many commercials on a 2-hour show. But after seeing how Raw was, I think SmackDown's perfect in terms of commercial breaks. No more complaints from me on that. They need to go to SmackDown. They need to go to the SmackDown formula in general. Things are paced better. You don't see the same people every week, except for like your, main stories. but lower and mid card, you don't see as much. And I think that's what they need to do on Raw. You're not going to be able to fit a 3-hour show into a 2-hour show every single week. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have to cut people, some weeks. This is how it is. To me, that's the only way you're really going to fix it, is you're going to have to cut some people off. Say, okay, we're not going to use you this week. We'll use you next week. But for now, we're going to use these people this week. So some people you're not going to see every week anymore, and it's just going to have to be that way. Otherwise, you're never going to get the pacing right. So that's one way. The other thing, again, definitely need to limit the commercials, because if you start limiting people on the card, but you still have these insane amount of commercials, it's not going to matter what you do. The show's going to feel rushed because we're watching commercials for more than half of the show. Like, I'm not even kidding. I think I could say, without it being much of an exaggeration, that we got 60 to 70% of the show was commercials. Which is ridiculous. It should never be that way no matter what you're watching. But it was very commercial heavy. And if they don't fix that, it does not matter what else they do to the show. It's going to always feel rushed. So first and foremost, actually, those commercials have got to be limited. You've got to go and use the SmackDown formula with commercials, and then do the SmackDown formula as a whole with a 2-hour show. And hopefully Netflix doesn't see this and be like, look at all this ad revenue. If they decide to do commercials, look at all these ad revenues we could get on a 2-hour show. Because at the end of the day, that's all they may care about. If they can get the same ad revenue on a 2-hour show versus a 3-hour show, they'll keep it at 2 hours. And again, that Raw to me is almost unwatchable if you don't fix the commercials. So I'm hoping WWE Netflix, the heads at each, or I guess TKO, whatever, sit and realize, hey, we need to do 3 hours for Raw, or if we do 2 hours for Raw, it needs to be commercial free. I think a 2-hour Raw commercial free could be just about as effective as a 3-hour Raw with commercials. Because when you do a 3-hour Raw and you have the commercials that we have, you lose 30 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe an hour due to commercials. So a 2-hour show without commercials, it would be a lot better than a 2-hour show with the amount of commercials that we have. But personally, the easiest fix is just to go back to 3 hours, I think, once it goes over to Netflix, which I'm hoping is what will happen. I'm hoping that's what the main plan is. Otherwise, it's going to, be really... It's not going to be an easy watch. I'm not going to lie to you. So outside of that, I mean, that's really kind of it. They just got to fix the pacing. They got to limit the commercials. Potentially go back to 3 hours. The biggest thing is people think, oh, next week will immediately be better. I heard this show's taped. Like, this next week's show for Raw is taped because I think they're going to the UK next, which means that show would also be taped. And so if you're going to have 2 taped shows back to back, taped shows in WWE are the only shows I've ever considered missing. When I hear the next show's taped, I always consider potentially missing those and watching the highlights, because especially on SmackDown, the tape shows just have never been good this year. But I don't think the tape show for Raw is going to be really that good either. And so it makes it pretty tempting to these next couple of weeks. Like, obviously I want to get used to the 2-hour formula, but man, if they're going to be taped and 2 hours, that's not going to give them any time to really fix the issues with it. So it's going to be a rough October, I think. Hopefully somewhere during the build to Survivor Series, they'll get it fixed. Otherwise, it's going to be really rough. And that leads into, okay, so the earliest they could fix it would be what? Early to mid-November. So you finally get the 2-hour formula down just in time for the Netflix deal, essentially. Because if they do what they did last year, they're not going to have a show, like a live show. It'll just be recap shows the final week or 2 of December for the holidays. So if they do that, you're only going to get 2 to 3, maybe 4 good 2-hour episodes of Raw, which is pretty concerning in my opinion, and pretty disappointing with just how good Raw's been. In my opinion, Raw has never been better. WWE as a whole has never been better. Financially, that's certainly true, but even in terms of quality of the show, it's been absolutely incredible. It's never been this good. And you cannot convince me otherwise. Don't even come at me with the Attitude Era excuse. I don't want to hear anything by people who are infected with nostalgia. Don't want to hear it. Absolutely, we are in the best era of WWE right now. So for this to happen and kind of go and kind of tank everything is definitely a disappointment. But I do want to still try and stay open-minded and positive, and know that WWE will eventually fix it. It's just the amount of time they actually truly have to isn't really as long. It's not as much time as people think it is. When you realize that the next one, potentially 2 shows are taped, that would put us at, let me see here real quick. Okay, well, my calendar is not wanting to open, but it would put us late October, because it's already the 9th. So that'd give us 1 episode in October, I think, maybe 2, for them to potentially fix it. But I don't think we'll see any real changes until at least November. October is going to be rough sledding. Hopefully they fix it before Survivor Series. Hopefully they fix it early, but there's also part of me that's like, if they don't ever fix it and the quality stays bad going into Netflix, maybe that forces the hand to go back up to 3 hours. Because if they fix it, even if it's right at the end of the time, that they might be like, oh, this 2 hours will work, and they'll keep it at 2 hours. When collectively, most of us WWE fans have actually wanted Raw to stay at 3 hours because of how good it's been over the last, year and a half. So, anyway, I'm gonna get out of here. That's enough rambling from me. That's enough bashing Monday Night Raw for one day. I'll see you guys again. I don't know when. I'm not going to make any promises on daily uploads or anything. I am going to try and do at least 1 or 2 videos a week though for you guys. So look forward to that. There'll at least be a little bit more content coming out. The next video should hopefully be more positive. Maybe the next piece of content will be a live stream for SmackDown. Who knows? We'll see what the future holds. WWE will figure it out. It's just a matter of when, and it's just a matter of if we just have to wait till it goes back to 3 hours. Maybe they don't figure out the 2-hour formula for Raw because it's been over a decade. Anyway, that's all I got. I will see you guys later. Drop some likes on this video if you guys enjoyed it. Subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload from me. Pieces.